Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The rain had been following Daniel Perez since Houston. It wasn't the heavy, drenching kind that slowed traffic to a crawl, but a steady, persistent drizzle that blurred the highway lights and made everything outside his windshield look smudged. His wipers squeaked rhythmically, rubber dragging against glass, every few seconds giving him a clearer look at the slick, empty road ahead. He'd been driving for hours, longer than he should have. His sister's voice was still fresh in his head from their last phone call. "Don't push yourself, Danny. Just stop somewhere if you're tired." He told her he would, but there wasn't much between Houston and Dallas along this stretch of highway. And truthfully, Daniel hated stopping at strange motels alone. The long, anonymous hallways, the sound of footsteps outside your door at night. He had never been able to shake the nervous energy that crept into his chest in places like that. But now, past midnight, his vision blurry from fatigue, he knew he couldn't push through another 2 hours of driving. His hands tightened on the wheel as he scanned for the next exit. That was when the sign appeared out of the rain. "Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy." The letters glowed weakly in neon, the O in motel flickering. Daniel sighed with relief. He slowed, taking the exit onto a cracked asphalt road that wound toward a lone building set back from the highway. The place was small, one long, low row of rooms with peeling beige paint and a buzzing overhead light near the office door. A couple of cars sat scattered across the lot, though most of the spaces were empty. Inside the office, a man was seated behind thick plexiglass. He looked about 50, his hair thinning, glasses perched low on his nose. He didn't smile when Daniel walked in, just pushed a clipboard through the slot. "Just you?" the man asked, voice flat. "Yeah. Just passing through. 48 a night. Pay up front." Daniel scribbled his name, slid over his credit card, and after a slow swipe through the machine, the man handed him a brass key attached to a cracked plastic tag. "Room 6. Coffee in the lobby at 7. Checkout's 11. Don't lose the key." Back outside, the drizzle had thickened into sheets of rain. Daniel jogged to his car, grabbed his overnight bag, and made for room 6. The door opened with a reluctant groan, and the smell hit him first: musty carpet, faint cigarette smoke buried under an attempt at lemon scent cleaner. He flicked the light switch. The room was plain: double bed with a sunken mattress, a dresser with a bolted-down TV, and curtains that didn't quite close. The air conditioner hummed faintly, rattling every few minutes. Daniel tossed his bag onto the chair and sat heavily on the edge of the bed. His phone buzzed. A text from his sister. "Make it okay? Please tell me you stopped." He smiled faintly and typed back. "Yeah. Crappy motel, but I'll survive. Good night." He set the phone down, kicked off his shoes, and lay back. His eyes burned from the long drive, but as he started to drift, he noticed something strange. From the corner of his eye, the gap in the curtains seemed wider now. Through it, he could see the blurred glow of the parking lot light, and the faint outline of someone standing just beyond. At first, he told himself it was nothing. A trick of the light, maybe a shadow. But when he turned his head fully, he saw it clear: a figure, standing motionless in the rain, facing his window. Daniel's breath caught. The person wasn't moving, wasn't coming closer. Just standing there, watching. Daniel sat up slowly, every nerve in his body tense. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, then looked again. The figure was still there, a dark outline against the wet shimmer of the parking lot. Rain streaked past the window, but the person didn't move, didn't flinch. Daniel told himself it had to be another guest, someone smoking, or just taking in the storm. But the way they stood, straight and deliberate, facing only his room, didn't feel casual. He forced a laugh under his breath, though it sounded thin. "Get a grip, man." Still, he got up and walked to the curtains. He tugged them shut until barely a sliver of the lot was visible. He hesitated, then reached for the lamp and switched it off, plunging the room into shadows. The only light came from the glow leaking in at the edges of the curtains. Daniel crouched low by the window, heart hammering, and peeked through. The figure had stepped closer. It was still impossible to make out details, just a human silhouette blurred by the rain, but it was now within 10 feet of his window, standing there like it belonged in the downpour. Daniel stumbled back, breath quickening. He reached for his phone on the nightstand, thumb hovering over his sister's number, then thought better of it. What was he going to say? Someone standing outside my room in the rain? She'd panic, and what if it really was just some guest getting soaked on their smoke break? Instead, he opened the front door fast, squinting into the storm. The parking lot was empty. The rain beat down, drenching the cracked asphalt, but no one was there. Just his car, the office light buzzing at the far end, and the steady hiss of water. Daniel's throat felt dry. He let the door close, locking it twice, and backed toward the bed. Too tired, he muttered to himself. Brains playing tricks. He sat, ran a hand over his face, and lay back down, this time pulling the blanket up to his chin. His body was heavy with exhaustion. His heart slowed, his eyes grew heavy. Sleep pulled at him. And then, a knock. Soft, deliberate, on the glass of his window. Daniel bolted upright, a cold sweat breaking across his skin. The knock came again. Slow. Even. Fingertips on glass. He stared at the curtains, frozen. His mind screamed at him not to look, not to move, but his body betrayed him. Step by step, he crept closer, pulse pounding in his ears. He reached the curtain. Held his breath. With one trembling finger, he pulled it open an inch. A pale face stared back at him through the rain-streaked glass. Daniel recoiled, slamming the curtain shut, stumbling backward until his knees hit the bed. His chest heaved, breath catching in panic bursts. The image was burned into his mind, skin ghostly pale, hair slicked flat by the rain, eyes wide and unblinking. The face had been inches from his own, separated only by the thin pane of glass. The knock came again. Louder this time. Then another. Steady. Demanding. No, 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 Daniel whispered, fumbling for his phone. He dialed 911 with shaking hands, pressed it to his ear. Static. Not silence. The faint hiss of static, like a dead channel on an old radio. He pulled the phone back, stared at the screen. The call hadn't gone through. No service. He checked again. 1 bar. 2. Then nothing. The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was only the sound of the rain and the rattling hum of the air conditioner. Daniel stayed frozen on the edge of the bed, listening, every muscle tight. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling his room. He could hear the wet slap of shoes on the pavement, moving from the window toward the door. Daniel sprang up, rushed to the dresser, and shoved it hard against the door. The wood groaned under the strain, but it held. His heart thundered as he grabbed the flimsy chair and wedged it under the knob for good measure. Silence again. He stood there, hands trembling, straining to hear over the rain. He thought he caught the faintest sound of breathing outside the door, but it could have been the storm. Minutes crawled by. 10. 15. The footsteps didn't return. The knocking didn't come again. Daniel's body ached from tension. He finally collapsed into the chair, clutching his phone like a lifeline, eyes locked on the door. At some point, exhaustion won. His eyes closed, head sagging against the wall. He woke to a thin strip of gray light creeping through the curtains. Morning. The storm had passed. Daniel bolted upright, disoriented, every muscle sore. He turned slowly toward the window. The glass was smeared with handprints. Pale, wet impressions streaked across it, pressed flat against the pane in frantic patterns. He staggered back, bow rising in his throat. His first thought was to grab his bag and leave, right now, without stopping at the office. But something in him needed to know if anyone else had seen or heard something. needed confirmation that he hadn't dreamt it all. He unlocked the door, shoved the dresser aside, and stepped into the damp morning air. The lot was nearly empty. Only one other car remained, parked crookedly at the far end. The motel office door was propped open, a faint radio playing inside. Daniel walked in, heart hammering. The clerk from last night was gone. In his place sat a younger woman, her hair pulled into a tight bun, scrolling through a ledger. She glanced up as he entered. "Check out?" Daniel swallowed hard. "Yeah, but last night, someone was outside my room, knocking on my window. Did anyone else?" She cut him off with a look that was both annoyed and faintly nervous. "You were in 6, right?" Daniel froze. "Yeah." The woman set her pen down slowly. "You should have asked for another room." Daniel's stomach sank. "What do you mean, I should have asked for another room?" The woman didn't meet his eyes. She fussed with the ledger, flipping a page that didn't need flipping. "Some rooms get complaints. Mostly 6. People say they hear things, see things. We usually try not to book it if we can avoid it." Daniel leaned forward on the counter, his voice low and sharp. "Hear things? See things? I'm not talking about noises. Someone was outside my window, knocking, watching me." Finally, her gaze met his. There was no disbelief there, no attempt to dismiss him as tired or imagining things. Only a tight, uneasy recognition. "You're not the first," she said. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. "So what, you just keep renting it out? Knowing something's wrong?" The woman's lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't own this place. My uncle does. He says if people don't like it, they can leave." "But," she hesitated, glanced at the office door, as though afraid of being overheard. "I've seen it too." Daniel's voice cracked. "Seen what?" She lowered her tone. "A man. Pale. Stands in the rain. Always the rain. Doesn't talk, doesn't move, just watches. I thought I dreamed it the first time. But the handprints." She trailed off. Daniel's breath came shallow. "So you admit it? You know someone's creeping around out there?" The woman shook her head quickly. "It's not. Look, I can't explain it. We've checked the cameras, the lot, the doors. No one's ever there when we look. Just the prints. And always at 6. Daniel opened his mouth to argue, then shut it. His brain grasped for logic, for some way to rationalize what he had seen. But the memory of that face pressed against the glass made his stomach churn. "I need to go," he muttered, pulling his bag higher on his shoulder. She nodded once, like she understood, and slid his receipt across the counter. Daniel pushed through the office door into the gray daylight. The lot was silent except for the dripping of the eaves. He unlocked his car with shaking hands and tossed his bag inside. As he pulled out, his eyes flicked to the row of rooms one last time. Room 6 sat silent, curtains drawn. Just a door and a window like any other. But in the reflection of the glass, distorted by the streaks of rainwater still clinging there, he thought he saw a figure. Still. Waiting. He pressed the accelerator, tires splashing through puddles, not daring to look back again. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in his apartment hours away, blinds drawn tight, every creak of the building making him flinch. His phone buzzed with a message from his sister, asking how the trip had gone. He stared at the screen, debating whether to tell her. In the end, he just typed. "Made it back. Long drive. Talk later." But when he set the phone down and rolled onto his side, he froze. His window, the one he'd locked tight before leaving, was streaked with fresh handprints. Pale, wet, pressed flat against the glass. Daniel's chest locked up as he stared at the handprints. His first thought was impossible but instinctive. They followed me. He scrambled out of bed, heart slamming in his chest, and crossed the room. His hands shook as he checked the window. The glass was cold, damp beneath his fingertips. He wiped at one of the smudges with his sleeve, and the fabric came away wet. Not condensation. Not his imagination. Actual moisture, as though someone had pressed their hands there only moments before. Daniel's throat tightened. He yanked the blinds shut and stepped back, forcing himself to breathe. Okay, he muttered. Call the cops. Just call. He grabbed his phone, dialed, and this time the call went through. His voice trembled as he explained to the dispatcher. Someone had been at his apartment window, leaving prints. Within minutes, the building's parking lot was lit up with red and blue strobes. 2 officers walked the perimeter, flashlights cutting through the dark. Daniel stood by the door in his hoodie and sweatpants, arms wrapped around himself, trying to steady his shaking. One of the officers, a stocky man with tired eyes, approached. We checked. No sign of forced entry, no footprints in the mud. Windows locked tight. Are you sure the prints weren't there before tonight? Daniel shook his head violently. I know what I saw. I was gone all week. Those windows were spotless when I got back. And they were wet. Like someone had just... He broke off, voice rising. The officer's expression softened. Look, sir, we'll file a report. But without evidence of a break-in, there's not much we can do. Maybe install a camera, motion lights. Daniel wanted to scream. He wanted to drag the officer to the window, press his face against the cold glass, make him feel the wrongness of it. But instead he just nodded numbly. When they finally left, silence fell heavy over the apartment. Daniel locked every door, every window, then sat awake until dawn, staring at the blinds. The next day at work, his co-workers noticed the dark circles under his eyes. He brushed off their questions with a weak smile. But when he got home, the prints were gone. The glass gleamed clean in the late afternoon sun. For a moment, relief washed over him. Maybe it had been a fluke. Maybe the storm, or kids messing around. Then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Why did you leave me in 6? Daniel dropped the phone like it had burned him. Daniel stared at the phone on the carpet, his pulse thundering in his ears. The text glowed on the cracked screen like a taunt. Why did you leave me in 6? He forced himself to pick it up. His thumb hovered over the keyboard, mind scrambling. Who is this? He typed, fingers shaking. He hit send. 3 dots appeared. Typing. Then they vanished. The screen stayed blank. He waited, chest tight, but no reply came. Daniel backed against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor. He pulled his knees to his chest, phone clutched in his hand like a weapon. His mind raced. Someone from the motel? The clerk? A sick prank? But how would they know his number? He checked the call log. The text came from an unlisted number, no area code he recognized. Finally, exhaustion pressed down heavier than fear. He set the phone on the coffee table, turned every lock again, and tried to sleep on the couch with the TV on low. Somewhere around 2 a.m., he woke with a start. The static of the TV filled the room, the kind of low hiss that crawls into your bones. Daniel sat up, blinking at the screen. He didn't remember turning it to static. He fumbled for the remote, but before he could change the channel, the white noise dipped, shifted, and then, buried under the hiss, came a voice. Faint. Distorted. Wet like it was gurgling through water. Daniel! His blood turned to ice. The voice rose again, louder this time, scraping against the static like fingernails on glass. Let me in. The TV snapped black. The apartment fell into silence so thick it roared in his ears. Daniel sat frozen, remote clutched in his hand, lungs burning. Then, 3 knocks at the window. Slow. Even. Familiar. He turned his head toward the blinds. A faint shadow shifted behind them, tall and still. Daniel bolted. He didn't grab his phone, didn't grab his keys. He sprinted out the front door barefoot, slamming it shut behind him, tearing down the stairwell 2 steps at a time until he exploded into the parking lot. The night air was sharp in his lungs. He spun, scanning every shadow. No figure. No sound but his own ragged breathing. Neighbors' windows glowed faintly above, but no one looked out. The world felt emptied, like it had been hollowed while he ran. Daniel stumbled toward his car, only to stop short. On the driver's side window, clear as day, were fresh handprints. Pale, wet, pressed flat against the glass. Daniel froze, his bare feet soaking in the puddles beneath the car. The handprints looked just like the ones at the motel, smeared as though whoever, or whatever, had pressed against the glass had lingered there, fingers dragging. His heart pounded so hard it hurt. He wanted to get inside, to lock the doors, to drive until the world behind him disappeared. But the thought of sliding into that car, with the prints still clinging to the glass, made bile rise in his throat. He fumbled backward, nearly tripping over the curb, and darted across the lot. The only thought in his head was people. If someone else saw it, if someone else confirmed he wasn't losing his mind, maybe it would feel less like the world was unraveling. He banged on his neighbor's door, a middle-aged man he barely spoke to. Lights flicked on inside, a shadow moved, and finally the door cracked open. The man squinted. "Jesus, Perez, it's 3 in the morning. What the hell?" Daniel's words tumbled out in a rush. "Someone's been outside my window, my car, they're leaving prints, they're knocking. Just look. Please, just look." His neighbor sighed, pulling on a robe, but something in Daniel's wild eyes must have registered. He followed him reluctantly into the lot. "There," Daniel gasped, pointing at his car. The man leaned in, flashlight from his phone sweeping across the glass. He frowned. "What prints?" Daniel's stomach dropped. He rushed forward, palms flat on the window. It was dry. Spotless. As though nothing had ever touched it. "No, no, they were here." His voice broke. "I swear to God they were right here." The neighbor shook his head, already turning back. "You need sleep, Perez. Or a drink. Go inside before I call management." Daniel stood in the lot, trembling, while the man disappeared inside. The silence rushed in again, heavy and complete. He couldn't go back to the apartment. He couldn't sit under those blinds knowing something waited on the other side. His only thought was distance. He grabbed his keys, slid into the driver's seat, and started the car. The headlights cut through the dark lot. For the briefest second, he saw movement in the mirror, something pale slipping between shadows at the far end. He slammed the car into gear and sped out, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. The highway stretched ahead, endless and empty. Daniel gripped the wheel so hard his hands ached, his eyes darting to the rearview mirror again and again. Nothing followed. But the longer he drove, the more familiar the exit signs became. The rain began again. And up ahead, flickering through the mist, a neon sign glowed faintly. "Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy." Daniel's stomach twisted as the sign came into view. It wasn't possible. He'd driven hours away from that place. He gripped the wheel harder, eyes flicking between the road and the glowing letters. The rain blurred everything, but the outline was unmistakable. The same peeling beige building. The same buzzing office light. The same crooked row of rooms huddled against the storm. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He pressed the accelerator, desperate to pass it by. But when he looked again, the exit was already beneath him, his car veering off almost against his will. The tires splashed onto the cracked asphalt road that led straight to the motel. The lot was nearly empty, just like before. His breath caught as his headlights swept across the doors, the windows. Room 6 sat in the center, curtains drawn, still and silent. Daniel slammed the brakes, heart in his throat. He didn't want to get out. Didn't want to step onto that wet pavement again. But the car idled on its own, the engine humming like it was waiting for him. A figure stood at the far end of the lot. Pale. Motionless. Watching. Daniel's chest constricted. He couldn't tell if it was rain running down the glass or tears in his eyes. But the figure blurred, then sharpened again with every blink. And then, without moving, without walking, it was closer. One blink, it was 20 feet away. Another blink, and it was 10. Daniel gasped, fumbling with the gearshift, but the car wouldn't move. The wheel locked, the pedals stiff. His headlights flickered once, twice, then cut out completely, plunging the lot into blackness. Only the neon sign buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly red and pink light. The figure was at his driver's side window now. Daniel pressed back against the seat, lungs heaving. The glass fogged from his breath, but beyond it, the pale face leaned in. Wide eyes. Dripping hair. The same face he had seen pressed to his motel window. A faint tapping began. Fingertips against glass. Slow. Even. Daniel screamed, slamming his fists against the steering wheel, the horn blaring into the storm. The figure didn't flinch. Just kept tapping. Then the locks clicked open. One by one, every door of the car unlocked. Daniel's blood turned cold at the sound, the sharp, mechanical clunk of the locks releasing. His hand shot to the door handle, yanking it upward, but it refused to budge. The lock sat raised, taunting him, but the door held firm as though welded shut. The tapping at the window grew louder, faster. Each strike rattled the glass until it vibrated under the assault. Daniel covered his ears, shouting, "Leave me alone! Leave me alone!" The rain suddenly cut out. Just silence. No hiss against the roof, no patter on the windshield. The world outside hung still, frozen. Daniel lowered his hands slowly. His breath roared in the quiet. The figure was gone. Cautiously, he glanced around. The lot lay empty beneath the red haze of the neon. Room doors stood shut, windows dark. Nothing moved. He exhaled a shaky laugh, the kind of brittle sound that came when nerves had been strung too tight for too long. Maybe he'd hallucinated it. Maybe he'd finally cracked. The passenger door opened. Daniel whipped his head around just as the dome light flickered on. Water dripped onto the seat. A pale hand gripped the edge of the doorframe, long fingers splayed against the vinyl. "No!" Daniel croaked, fumbling at the ignition. The key turned, but the engine coughed and died. The door creaked wider. And then the figure was inside, sliding into the seat beside him, closing the door with deliberate calm. Up close, Daniel saw details he hadn't before. Skin bloated, waterlogged, veins branching like spiderwebs beneath the surface. Lips cracked and bluish, but curved in something that almost resembled a smile. The smell hit him next, damp earth, rot, mildew. His stomach lurched. Daniel pressed himself against the driver's side door, one hand gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles whitened. "What do you want?" he whispered. The figure tilted its head. Water dripped from its chin onto the seat, soaking into the fabric. When it spoke, the voice was low, guttural, as though filtered through static. "You came to 6. You saw me. Now you carry me." Daniel's throat closed. "Carry you where?" The figure leaned closer, its cold breath brushing his cheek. "Home." Daniel's body seized with panic. The air inside the car felt thick, damp, like he was breathing underwater. His instinct screamed at him to run, but every muscle seemed locked in place. The figure's face hovered inches from his, wide eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. Droplets ran down its cheeks, pattering onto Daniel's lap. I don't know where your home is," Daniel stammered. The figure's head cocked to the side, jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on strings. Its lips peeled back into that strange, water-swollen smile. "You'll know." Daniel's hand jerked toward the door handle, but the figure moved with unnatural speed, its wet palms slamming against his wrist. The touch was ice, so cold he gasped aloud. "You leave again," the voice gurgled. "I'll follow." Daniel's vision swam. He tried to pull free, but the hand held tight. He could feel moisture seeping into his skin, like the figure's touch was soaking through his veins. Then, as suddenly as it grabbed him, it let go. The passenger seat was empty. The dome lights still glowed, casting weak yellow shadows across the wet vinyl. But the figure was gone. Daniel's breath came in ragged gasps. His wrist still ached from the chill of that grip. Without thinking, he turned the key again. This time, the engine roared to life, startling him with its suddenness. The dome light clicked off. He slammed the car into gear and peeled out of the lot, tires spitting water. The neon sign shrank in the rearview mirror until it vanished into the storm. For hours, Daniel drove without direction, just fleeing, desperate to put distance between himself and that place. Eventually, the highway gave way to back roads, then to winding stretches of farmland. Dawn broke gray over the horizon. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. He snatched it up. Another message from the same unknown number. Almost home. Daniel's hands slipped on the wheel. He swerved, correcting, heart pounding. Up ahead, through the mist of morning, he saw it, a narrow dirt road cutting into the trees. At the end, half hidden by vines and overgrowth, stood a weathered sign. The paint was nearly gone, but he could just make out the letters. Welcome home. Daniel slowed the car, gravel crunching beneath his tires as he turned onto the dirt road. His chest tightened with every foot deeper into the trees. The branches hung low and dripping, their shadows weaving across the windshield like skeletal fingers. He didn't know why he hadn't just kept driving. Why he hadn't turned back toward the highway, toward anywhere else. But something gnawed at him, tugged at the back of his mind with invisible threads. The figure's words echoed, "You'll know." The road narrowed, overgrown with weeds and roots that thumped against the undercarriage. The air grew colder the further he went, dampness seeping into the car despite the heater running full blast. After what felt like miles, the trees opened onto a clearing. There it stood. A sagging, two-story farmhouse, its paint stripped bare by decades of weather. Windows were broken or boarded. The roof dipped low in the middle, bowing under years of neglect. A porch slouched forward, half swallowed by weeds and moss. But what made Daniel's stomach twist was the familiarity. He had never been here before, not in his waking life, but something deep inside whispered recognition. His phone buzzed again. Another message. Inside. Daniel's grip on the wheel tightened until his knuckles went white. He shook his head, muttering to himself. No, I'm not doing this. But his body betrayed him. Before he realized it, he'd killed the engine and stepped out into the cold, wet grass. His bare feet sank into the mud, but he didn't care. He could barely feel them. The house loomed, silent except for the creak of wood shifting in the wind. Daniel climbed the porch steps, each one groaning under his weight. The front door was swollen with water damage, the knob rusted, but when he pushed, it opened easily. Inside, the air was thick with rot and mildew. The wallpaper peeled in curling strips, and the floor sagged in places where water had eaten away the boards. Daniel's chest rose and fell in short, sharp breaths. He stepped forward, the floor moaning beneath him. His eyes swept across the room, broken furniture, shattered glass, mold climbing the walls like veins. Then he heard it. A knock. From upstairs. 3 slow, deliberate raps. The same rhythm he'd heard at the motel window. The sound echoed through the ruined house, sharp against the silence. Daniel froze at the bottom of the staircase, every instinct screaming at him to run. But his legs carried him forward, step by step, as though pulled by invisible strings. The stairs groaned under his weight. Flakes of plaster drifted from the ceiling with each creak, the whole house seeming to breathe with his movements. Halfway up, he stopped to listen. Silence. Then, another knock. 3 beats. Slow. Patient. The sound came from the end of the upstairs hallway. Daniel's mouth was dry, his breathing shallow. He forced his body up the remaining steps until he stood at the landing. The hallway stretched out, long and dark. Doors lined both sides, most hanging off hinges or rotted away. At the very end stood one door, closed. The wood was swollen and blackened with age, but intact. Daniel swallowed hard. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out with trembling hands. Another message. Don't keep me waiting. A tremor ran through him. His thumb hovered over the power button, but before he could act, the phone screen flickered. Static washed over it, then cleared. A live video feed filled the screen. It was his face. From behind. His own back and shoulders, filmed as he stood in the hallway, phone raised, staring at the screen. Daniel's breath itched. He spun around, phone lights sweeping the corridor. Nothing but shadows, peeling wallpaper, the smell of mold. But on the screen, the video still showed him, his own outline trembling under the glow of his phone. And just behind him, at the edge of the frame, a pale figure stood in the shadows. Daniel dropped the phone. It clattered against the floor, screen still glowing. The knock came again, louder this time. The door at the end of the hall shuddered under the force. Something inside wanted out. The door rattled with each knock, dust sifting from the frame. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, heart hammering, eyes locked on that swollen, rotted wood. "Think," he whispered to himself. "Don't go near it. Just get out. Leave." But his feet inched forward anyway, dragging him toward the end of the hall. The floor bowed beneath him, soft with rot, groaning under each step. The closer he got, the colder the air became. His breath fogged in front of him, drifting into the darkness. Another knock. Louder. This time followed by a slow, scraping sound, like fingernails dragging across the inside of the door. Daniel's hands shook as he reached out. His fingertips brushed the knob. It was icy, slick with condensation. He yanked his hand back as if burned. Behind him, his phone buzzed on the floor. The sound echoed down the hallway, unnatural in the silence. Buzz. Pause. Buzz. The vibration grew louder, shaking the wood beneath his feet. Daniel turned, staring at the device as it skittered across the floor like something alive. The screen lit again. A message. "Open it!" The scraping from the door intensified, nails clawing furiously against the wood. The knob trembled, rattling against its rusted plate. Daniel's chest heaved. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "I'm not opening it. I'm not." The door slammed once, so hard the frame splintered. Daniel stumbled back, nearly tripping over a broken floorboard. His phone buzzed again, screen flashing with another message. "If you won't, I will." The knob turned. Slow. Deliberate. The swollen wood cracked as the door began to open. The door groaned as it inched open, the swollen wood splintering, the frame cracking under the pressure of something forcing its way out. The scraping stopped. Silence swelled in its place, heavy and suffocating. Daniel stumbled backward, shaking his head, his voice breaking. "No, don't, please don't." The gap widened. From the darkness within, cold air poured out, wetter and heavier than the storm outside. It stank of stagnant water, mildew, and something older, fouler. A pale hand emerged first, swollen and bloated, veins dark under translucent skin. Its nails were cracked, jagged, leaving fresh grooves in the wood as it pulled against the frame. Another hand followed, clutching the door, dragging the rest of the body into view. The figure stooped low as it stepped into the hallway. Taller than Daniel remembered, shoulders bent at impossible angles, dripping with water that pooled across the warped floorboards. Its face lifted toward him. Those same wide, unblinking eyes. That cracked blue smile. Daniel's legs refused to move. His entire body screamed to run, but his muscles locked, useless. He pressed flat against the wall as the figure straightened to its full height, nearly brushing the ceiling. The air buzzed faintly, like distant static. The voice came next, low and guttural, gurgling as though rising from deep water. "You opened the door, Daniel." His head shook violently. "No, I didn't open it." The figure's grin widened, water spilling down its chin. "You thought about it. That's enough." The floor groaned sharply, wood snapping. The boards beneath the figure sagged, collapsing into a black, rippling void. Water sloshed up, dark and endless, swallowing broken planks. The figure's pale hand reached toward Daniel. "Time to come home." The floor beneath Daniel's feet buckled. Cold surged up his legs as the boards splintered. He clawed at the wall, at the molding, desperate to hold on. But the rotting wood gave way, dragging him into the rushing black water below. His scream echoed down the hallway as the house swallowed him whole. The plunge stole the air from Daniel's lungs. Icy water closed over his head, thick and black, pressing against him from all sides. He kicked wildly, arms thrashing, but the weight dragged him downward. He opened his eyes, dark shapes shifted in the murk. Figures. Dozens of them. Faces pale, eyes wide and unblinking, mouths open in silent screams. Their swollen hands reached out, brushing his arms, his legs, pulling him deeper. Daniel's chest burned. He fought upward, clawing through the water, but for every foot he gained, the hands pulled him farther down. His scream bubbled uselessly from his throat. Then, through the darkness, he saw it, the glow of a neon sign. Highway Haven Motel, vacancy. The letters shimmered just above the surface, distorted by ripples, impossible and surreal. He kicked harder, bursting upward. His head broke the surface. And he was standing, panting, soaked to the bone, back in the parking lot of the motel. His car idled nearby, engine humming steady. Rain poured down, soaking the asphalt. But the lot wasn't empty. Every room door stood open. And from each one, pale figures stepped into the storm. Men, women, children, all waterlogged, eyes wide and glowing faintly in the neon haze. They moved in unison, forming a circle around him, silent but deliberate. The rain ran off their skin, dripping into the puddles at their feet. Daniel's knees buckled. He spun, desperate for an opening, but the circle tightened. One of the figures stepped forward, the same one from his window, from the passenger seat, from the house. Its grin stretched unnaturally wide as it raised a hand and pointed to the motel office. Daniel's phone buzzed in his pocket. With shaking hands, he pulled it out. One new message. Check in. The buzzing neon reflected in the rain-slick screen. His breath came shallow, ragged. Slowly, like in a dream he couldn't wake from, Daniel turned toward the office door. It stood open, warm light spilling out into the storm. The yellow light spilling from the office looked almost welcoming compared to the pale circle of figures hemming him in. Daniel's legs shook as he forced them to move, his soaked clothes clinging to his skin. Every step splashed through puddles, echoing like thunder in his ears. The figures didn't follow. They only stood, shoulder to shoulder, their hollow eyes tracking him, heads turning in eerie unison as he passed. When Daniel reached the office door, he hesitated. The smell of mildew and wet carpet wafted from inside, sharp and suffocating. He turned back once. Every figure was still staring. Silent. Waiting. He swallowed hard and stepped over the threshold. The office looked just as it had the first night he checked in. The same buzzing fluorescent light. The same cracked linoleum floor. Behind the counter, the plexiglass barrier gleamed faintly in the glow. But the clerk wasn't the man with thinning hair, nor the young woman he'd seen the next morning. It was the pale figure. It stood behind the counter as though it belonged there, dripping water onto the ledger. Its wide, unblinking eyes locked onto Daniel, and its swollen lips stretched into that cracked smile. A clipboard slid through the slot in the glass, the same as before. A single sheet of paper was clipped to it. Daniel's name was scrawled at the top, already written in shaky ink. The figure's voice gurgled low, bubbling like static through water. Sign! Daniel's trembling hand closed around the pen. His mind screamed at him to run, to fight, to do anything but obey. Yet when he looked down at the paper, he saw the lines below his name, rows and rows of other signatures, some decades old, some smeared by water, some written in shaking, desperate scrawls. The clerk's wet fingers tapped the counter. Sign and stay. Daniel raised the pen. His wrist quivered, the tip hovering over the page. The air in the room thickened, pressing against his chest until he could hardly breathe. Behind him, he felt the silent weight of dozens of figures filling the doorway, their presence cold and damp. The pen touched paper. The pen dragged across the paper in a trembling line. Daniel's hand wasn't his own anymore. Something guided it, pressed it down, forcing the ink into the page. Letters formed one after another, his name repeating itself in neat, unnatural strokes. Daniel tore his hand back, the pen clattering to the floor. His chest heaved, panic surging as he stumbled from the counter. The page still sat on the clipboard, his name written cleanly at the bottom as though he'd signed willingly. The pale clerk lifted the sheet slowly, holding it up to the light. Water dripped from its fingers, soaking the paper until the ink bled, his name dissolving into black rivulets. Then the figure looked up, its grin widening. "It's done!" Behind him, the crowd of pale figures pressed closer into the office, their wet footsteps squelching against the floor. The air grew heavy with the stench of stagnant water, their bodies dripping onto the linoleum. Daniel backed toward the door, voice cracking. "No, I didn't mean to." The clerk's voice cut him off, bubbling with static. "You checked in. You stay." The words echoed, bouncing off the walls, seeping into Daniel's head until they weren't words anymore but a command pulsing through his veins. He shoved through the circle of figures at the door, bursting back into the rain-soaked lot. His lungs burned as he staggered toward his car, mud and water splashing under his bare feet. The driver's door was already open. The interior light glowed faintly, casting the seat in a sickly yellow. Daniel slowed, dread flooding him. On the seat sat the motel key. Room 6. The brass tag gleamed wetly, water pooling beneath it as though it had just been pulled from a flood. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another message lit the screen. "Your room is ready." Daniel's hand shook as he looked up. Across the lot, room 6's curtains were open now. Light glowed faintly within, and a figure stood silhouetted in the window, waiting. The glow from room 6's window cut through the rain like a beacon. Daniel's pulse hammered, his instincts screaming to flee, but his legs pulled him forward, step by step across the flooded lot. The figures didn't stop him this time. They stood scattered now, their pale forms blending into the storm, heads turning as he passed, eyes reflecting the neon glow. His soaked clothes clung to him, every movement heavy, but the pull toward the open curtains was relentless. When he reached the door to room 6, the brass key was already in his hand. He didn't remember picking it up. The tag dangled, dripping, as he slid it into the lock. The door swung open on its own. Inside, the room looked exactly as it had that first night. The sagging mattress, the rattling AC, the smell of mildew poorly masked by cleaner. But it was too clean. The bed was freshly made, the blankets smooth. The TV glowed faintly with static though no sound came from it. On the bed sat a second key, identical to the one in his hand. Daniel froze in the doorway, water dripping from his hair onto the carpet. His chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked breaths. "I don't belong here," he whispered. The static on the TV crackled. A voice hissed through the noise, distorted but unmistakable. "You do now." The door slammed behind him. The key in his hand fell to the carpet with a dull clink. Daniel spun, clawing at the knob, but it wouldn't budge. The AC rattled louder, then cut out completely, plunging the room into suffocating silence. And then, knock. From inside the closet. 3 slow, deliberate raps. The TV screen flared brighter, the static giving way to a shaky image. The motel room. His room. Filmed from the ceiling corner, as though a hidden camera had been there all along. On the screen, the closet door began to open. The closet door creaked open on the TV screen, its frame shuddering like it resisted whatever pushed from inside. Daniel's breath came shallow and sharp, his eyes locked to the flickering image. The camera feed showed the closet door opening wider, but in the real room, the actual room around him, the door was still shut tight. He turned, staring at it. Damp streaks bled down the wood, as though water seeped from inside. On the TV, a pale hand emerged from the crack, fingers curling against the frame. In the room itself, Daniel saw nothing, just the dripping door. But the sound came next. A wet, dragging inhale. From inside. Daniel stumbled backward until his legs hit the bed. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He snatched it up without thinking, desperate for something human. One new message. "Answer the door." "No," he whispered, shaking his head violently. His thumb hovered over the power button, but the phone flickered to static before he could press it. The closet door shuddered, swelling outward as though something inside pressed against it. The knob rattled, water running down its surface in thin streams. On the TV feed, the figure stepped fully into the room, a dripping, waterlogged shape, taller than the ceiling, head bent at an angle. It moved toward the bed. Toward him. Daniel's stomach dropped. He looked from the TV to the empty space in front of him. Nothing. Just the humming static glow. Then the mattress dipped at his side. The bed sagged, pressed down by invisible weight. Water spread across the blanket, soaking through to his skin. Daniel's scream tore through the room as he threw himself off the bed, landing hard on the wet carpet. He scrambled toward the door, pounding against it with both fists. Behind him, the closet burst open. The sound was deafening, wood splintering, hinges tearing free, a crash that shook the entire room. Daniel spun, back pressed to the locked door, as the closet yawned open. Water poured out in a flood, black and cold, sweeping across the carpet in a wave that soaked his legs and dragged at his body. The stench of rot and stagnant ponds filled the air. And through the rushing water came the figure. It bent low to fit through the frame, its pale head cocked unnaturally to the side. Veins branched beneath its translucent skin, pulsing faintly in the glow of the static TV. Its hair hung in wet ropes, its eyes wide and glassy. It stepped onto the carpet with deliberate slowness, water sloshing around its feet. Daniel clawed at the doorknob behind him, screaming, twisting, pounding, but the lock held firm. The brass key he'd dropped earlier floated past him in the flood, spinning lazily in the current before vanishing under the bed. The figure's mouth opened. A rush of black water spilled out, drenching the blanket, flooding the floor higher. Then came the voice, bubbling and guttural, as though spoken from beneath the surface of a lake. "You signed. You stay." Daniel shook his head violently, tears mixing with rainwater on his cheeks. "No, I didn't. I don't belong here." The figure tilted its head, that cracked smile stretching wider. "You belong to 6. The water rose to Daniel's waist. Furniture shifted and floated, the chair, the nightstand, the buzzing TV sparking in the flood. Desperation took hold. Daniel lunged toward the window, shoving the curtains aside. His fists pounded the glass. It didn't crack. Didn't even rattle. Behind him, the figure moved closer, its swollen hand reaching out. Daniel screamed and threw himself against the window with all his strength. The glass finally shattered outward, exploding into the storm. Cold rain rushed in as he hauled himself through, cutting his arms on jagged edges. He landed hard on the pavement outside, the flood water rushing out behind him like a burst dam. But when he looked up, gasping in the downpour, his stomach turned to ice. Every door in the motel was open now. And from each one, pale figures poured into the lot, hundreds of them, their eyes locked on him. The lot filled with the sound of waterlogged footsteps, a slow and unified rhythm as the figures advanced. Rain hissed on the asphalt, neon light buzzing overhead, but everything else was silence. No voices, no breaths, only the wet slap of bare feet drawing closer. Daniel staggered backward, his hands raw and bleeding from the shattered glass. His chest heaved as he spun, searching for an escape. His car still idled nearby, headlights flickering weakly through the storm. He sprinted toward it, slipping in puddles, his heart pounding so hard it blurred his vision. Behind him, the crowd followed, dozens, maybe hundreds, moving without haste, without fear of losing him, like they knew he couldn't outrun them. He flung himself into the driver's seat and slammed the door. The locks clicked shut on their own, one by one, a metallic clunk that made his skin crawl. The figures encircled the car, their pale faces pressing against the windows, water streaming down the glass. Fingers smeared wet trails as they dragged across, tracing lines like veins. Daniel gripped the wheel. "Go. Please, just go." The engine roared when he floored the gas. The tires spun on the slick pavement before catching, the car fishtailing wildly. He shot forward, headlights slicing through the storm, scattering the figures, but they didn't chase. They only watched. As he tore down the exit road, the motel shrank behind him. Relief surged, raw, desperate relief. He was leaving. He was getting away. But then the headlights swept over a sign ahead, its neon glow warped by the rain. "Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had just left it behind. But there it was again, waiting for him, the same crooked row of rooms, the same buzzing office light. His hands slipped on the wheel, panic surging fresh. He slammed the brakes, skidding to a halt. Rain hammered the roof, the windshield, drowning everything else in noise. In the rearview mirror, his reflection stared back at him. Wide eyes. Soaked hair. But as he watched, his reflection began to smile. Not him. Something inside the glass. Daniel's breath hitched as his reflection grinned wider, water dripping down its cheeks inside the glass. He tore his eyes from the mirror, heart hammering, and slammed the car back into gear. The tires shrieked against the wet asphalt as he whipped the wheel, aiming the car away from the motel, away from the sign. He didn't care which direction he went, just not there. The road curved through sheets of rain, trees flashing past in broken glimpses. Daniel leaned forward, his knuckles white on the wheel, whispering to himself. Don't look back. Don't look back. Just keep going. But the headlights caught something up ahead. Figures. Dozens of them, standing across the road shoulder to shoulder, pale and dripping, eyes reflecting white in the beam. Their faces were blank, expressions empty but fixed directly on him. Daniel screamed and jerked the wheel. The car swerved, tires catching mud, sliding sideways down an embankment. The world spun, trees slashing past, glass shattering as metal crunched and buckled. Then silence. Daniel blinked into the dark, the taste of iron in his mouth. The car was on its side, steam hissing from the crumpled hood. Rain poured in through the broken window, soaking him where he hung against the seatbelt. Groaning, he fumbled for the release. The belt snapped loose, and he tumbled onto the roof of the overturned car, coughing, spitting blood. For a moment, there was only the rain and the ringing in his ears. Then footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Slapping wet against the mud. Daniel pushed himself up, vision swimming. The figures were there, descending the embankment in perfect silence, their pale bodies slipping between trees, closing in from every side. He crawled backward until his spine hit the wrecked bumper. His chest heaved, throat raw as he shouted into the storm. What do you want from me? The circle tightened. One figure stepped forward, taller than the rest, head tilted, eyes wide and glassy. Its lips parted, and water poured from its mouth in a steady stream. Then it spoke, voice bubbling low and guttural. You checked in, Daniel. Now you never leave. Daniel pressed himself against the wreck, hands splayed across the cold metal as though it could shield him. The figures closed in, their pale feet squelching in the mud, their dripping forms blurring into the sheets of rain. He shook his head, throat raw. I didn't check in. I never wanted this. The tall figure crouched low, its face inches from his. Its eyes were huge and glassy, veins spiderwebbing beneath the translucent skin. Its breath smelled of stagnant water and mold. You signed. It gurgled, water dribbling from its lips. You stay. Daniel's voice broke. Then take me. End it. Just end this. For a moment, the figures were still. Silent, statues in the storm. Then, in unison, they began to laugh. Not a human laugh, wet, hollow, bubbling through waterlogged throats. The sound rose and fell like waves crashing, surrounding him, drowning out the storm. Daniel clapped his hands over his ears, screaming, but the sound burrowed into his skull. The tall figure leaned closer. Its grin stretched impossibly wide, cracked lips splitting. No end, it said. Only stay. The world tilted beneath Daniel, the mud sinking, the ground itself liquefying into black water. His hands plunged wrist deep, then elbow deep, the muck sucking him down. He kicked, thrashed, but the more he fought, the faster he sank. The figures stood at the edges, watching, their eyes glowing faintly in the storm. Some extended their hands as if beckoning him deeper. Daniel's chin dipped below the surface, foul water filling his mouth and nose. His scream became a gurgle. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was the neon glow above the trees, impossible, flickering through the storm. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. Then the water closed over his head. Darkness pressed in from all sides. Daniel's lungs burned, his body convulsing as the black water dragged him deeper. He clawed upward, but there was no surface, only endless cold swallowing him whole. Shapes shifted in the murk. Faces. Dozens of them, pale and bloated, eyes wide with that same vacant stare. Their mouths opened and closed silently, hair drifting like weeds in the current. Some reached for him with swollen hands, brushing his arms and legs as they pulled him farther down. Daniel kicked wildly, his chest aching, vision sparking at the edges. His mind screamed breathe, but he fought it, lips clamped tight until he broke through. Air filled his lungs in a ragged gasp. He stumbled forward, coughing, water streaming from his clothes and hair. His knees hit carpet. He froze. He was back in room 6. The bed sat neatly made. The AC rattled faintly. The curtains hung half shut. Everything was exactly as it had been that first night, except for the pool of water spreading across the floor, dripping steadily from his clothes. Daniel's eyes darted wildly. No, 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 no. I left. I left! The TV flared to life with static, buzzing so loud it rattled the walls. The screen flickered, showing the motel office. Behind the counter, the pale clerk stood dripping, holding the clipboard. The sheet of paper still glowed faintly, his name etched into it in black ink. The clerk's glassy eyes stared through the screen as its lips moved, voice bubbling out through the static. Welcome home, Daniel. The closet door creaked behind him. 3 slow knocks. The figures began to whisper. At first faint, like water trickling through pipes, but then rising into a chorus. Their voices gurgled from the walls, from the vents, from the dripping ceiling. Stay, stay, stay. Daniel pressed his hands to his ears, screaming until his throat tore raw, but the voices only grew louder. The doorknob to the closet began to turn. The knob turned with agonizing slowness, the old brass groaning as it twisted. Daniel's back pressed against the wet wall, his eyes locked on the closet. Water streamed from the frame, pooling at his feet. The door opened a crack. Darkness oozed through like smoke, thick and damp, spreading across the room. Daniel shook his head violently, his voice breaking. I won't stay here. You can't keep me. The whispers swelled, overlapping, hundreds of voices rising into a suffocating chant. Stay. 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 On the TV, the clerk leaned closer to the camera, its pale face filling the screen. Its mouth stretched wide, and Daniel's own voice echoed out through the static. You checked in. Daniel's breath caught. His voice. His exact tone, warped by water. The closet door creaked wider. A hand emerged, bloated, pale, nails black and jagged. It pressed against the floorboards, leaving streaks of water. Another hand followed, gripping the edge of the frame. Then the figure crawled out. Not the tall one, not the grinning clerk, but something smaller. A child. Its eyes were wide and glassy, hair plastered to its face in wet clumps. It wore what might once have been pajamas, now tattered and soaked. Daniel's heart lurched painfully. The child tilted its head, staring at him with that same vacant look. When it opened its mouth, water streamed out, spilling across the floor. Daddy! It gurgled. Daniel staggered back, shaking his head, tears burning his eyes. No. No, I don't. More hands gripped the frame. More shapes crawled from the closet. Women, men, children, all waterlogged, all staring at him. The room filled with them, the air heavy with damp rot. The voices rose in unison, gurgling through ruined throats. You belong to us. Daniel's knees gave out. He fell into the rising flood, choking on the stench, on the weight of so many eyes watching him. The last thing he saw before the water closed over him again was the glowing motel sign flickering outside the window, its letters buzzing, unyielding. Vacancy. The flood swallowed Daniel whole, dragging him down through black water that felt thicker than liquid, pulling like hands. His screams bubbled out uselessly, drowned by the chorus of voices. Stay. 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 He thrashed, desperate for air, until his hands struck something solid. Wood. He clawed upward, breaking the surface with a gasp. But he wasn't in room 6 anymore. He was in a hallway. The same hallway upstairs in the rotted farmhouse. The wallpaper sagged with mildew, floorboards slicked beneath him. Water seeped from under every door, pouring into the hall and lapping at his ankles. Behind him, a door slammed shut on its own. Ahead, the hall stretched endlessly, lined with doors identical to room SIXS. Each one rattled, knobs twisting, something inside pounding to get out. Daniel staggered forward, panting, his feet sloshing through rising water. The air buzzed faintly with static, growing louder as he neared the end of the hall. A light flickered under the final door. Yellow, like the motel office. His phone buzzed in his pocket. With shaking hands, he pulled it out. Another message lit the screen. "Check out." Daniel's breath caught. His eyes darted to the door, then back to the phone. This was it. A chance. An exit. He reached for the knob, cold, slick with condensation, and turned. The office lay beyond, just as he remembered: the counter, the plexiglass, the buzzing light overhead. Behind the glass, the clerk stood waiting, dripping steadily onto the ledger. The clipboard slid through the slot again. This time, the page bore only 2 words beneath his smeared signature. "Check out." The clerk's pale eyes fixed on him. Its voice bubbled, distorted, filling the room and his head at once. "Sign and you're free." Daniel's trembling hand hovered over the pen. Every instinct screamed trap, but the weight of the voices pressing from the hall drove him forward. He grabbed the pen, scrawled his name across the line. The moment the ink hit the paper, the whispers stopped. Silence. Heavy, absolute. The office light flared white. Daniel blinked, blinded. When his vision cleared, he was standing on the side of a highway. Rain fell steady. Cars hissed past in the dark, their headlights streaking through the storm. His car sat behind him, perfectly intact, parked on the shoulder. The motel was gone. Daniel staggered toward his car, blinking against the rain. The asphalt was real beneath his feet, gritty and solid. The cars on the highway sped past without slowing, their taillights vanishing into the storm. For the first time in what felt like days, the air smelled clean. Wet pavement, exhaust, nothing of rot or mildew. His hands trembled as he reached for the driver's side door. It opened easily, the seat dry, the interior exactly as he'd left it. His overnight bag sat on the passenger side, untouched. Daniel slid into the seat, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. "It's over," he whispered, voice hoarse. "It's over. I'm out." The engine started on the first turn of the key. The sound nearly brought him to tears. He pulled back onto the highway, the steady hum of the road beneath him grounding, real. Mile markers flashed by. Familiar exits reappeared. His phone buzzed on the console. He froze, dread crawling cold through his veins. Slowly, he picked it up. One new message. From his sister. "Hey, just checking in. Did you make it through the storm okay?" Relief flooded him so suddenly he laughed out loud, choking on the sound. His hands shook as he typed back. "Yeah. I'm fine. Headed home." He tossed the phone back onto the console, gripping the wheel tighter. Focus on the road. Just get home. An hour passed. The rain thinned, the clouds breaking into patches. His exhaustion weighed heavy, but freedom pulsed through him stronger. Then, up ahead in the distance, a faint glow through the mist. Neon. Daniel's stomach dropped. As the road curved, the sign came into view. "Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy." His hand slipped on the wheel. His chest constricted as tears blurred his vision. He had never left. Daniel slammed the brakes, tires squealing on the wet asphalt. His car skidded sideways before screeching to a halt. He sat frozen, staring at the flickering neon sign ahead. The letters buzzed in the mist, their glow searing into his eyes. Vacancy. His throat worked in a dry swallow. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "No, I got out. I signed out. I left." But the motel stood there, as solid as anything else in the storm. The crooked row of rooms, the buzzing office light, the peeling beige paint. Waiting for him. The radio in his car crackled to life, though he hadn't touched it. Static hissed, then shifted into that wet, gurgling voice. "You checked in, Daniel? You don't check out." Daniel slammed the power button, but the static kept playing. Louder now, filling the car, vibrating through his chest. He covered his ears, screaming, but the voice drowned him out. In the rearview mirror, his reflection grinned again. This time, water streamed from its eyes and mouth, flooding the glass. His reflection leaned closer, lips moving in perfect sync with the radio. "Come home." Daniel shoved the door open, stumbling into the rain. He ran, slipping across the asphalt, lungs burning. But no matter how far he moved, the motel stayed in front of him, its crooked row of doors stretching longer, wider, as if the building itself grew to block his path. The office door stood open, warm light spilling into the storm. Daniel dropped to his knees, sobbing. "Please! I don't want this. I just want to go home." From the office came the sound of a bell, sharp and clear. Ding! The same bell he'd heard his first night, when he signed in. Figures began to emerge from the rooms again, pale and dripping, moving toward him in silence. Their eyes glowed faintly in the storm, fixed only on him. And through the roar of rain and static, Daniel realized the truth. There had never been an escape. The motel had always been waiting. The circle closed around him again, pale figures forming a wall of dripping bodies. Their eyes glowed faintly, mouths moving in unison with the storm's rhythm. The chant began low, bubbling through their ruined throats. "Stay, stay, stay." Daniel staggered to his feet, swaying. His voice cracked through sobs. "Why me? Why me?" The figures parted. From the office, the tall one stepped forward, the same clerk, the same passenger in his car, the same shadow behind every reflection. Its swollen lips stretched into that impossible grin. "You came," it gurgled. "That is enough." Daniel's legs buckled, but the figure caught him with icy hands. The touch froze him to the marrow, his body shaking as though submerged in a winter river. The clerk leaned close, its voice wet and intimate against his ear. "Many drive by. Few stop. Fewer still see." Daniel sobbed, thrashing weakly. "I don't want to see. I don't want any of this." The figure tilted its head, eyes wide and glassy. "Want does not matter. Vacancy must be filled." The crowd of figures surged closer, pressing against him, their cold hands gripping his arms, his shoulders, his legs. Their touch soaked him, water seeping through his skin until he felt hollow, drowning from within. The neon buzzed overhead, flickering wildly. His vision blurred, and for a moment, he saw the sign not as Highway Haven Motel, but as rows of names, stretching endlessly, each one glowing faintly. Guests who had come before. Guests who had stayed. His own name shimmered among them. The figures dragged him toward room 6. Its door stood open, golden light spilling from inside. The bed was made, the air conditioner hummed softly, as though nothing were wrong at all. The clerk's grip tightened around his wrist, forcing him across the threshold. "Welcome home, Daniel." The door slammed shut. The slam rattled the walls, sealing Daniel inside. Room 6 smelled the same as always, stale smoke buried beneath lemon cleaner, mildew clinging in the corners. The hum of the AC filled the silence, steady and indifferent. But Daniel wasn't alone. Figures lined the walls, shoulder to shoulder, their dripping bodies pressed against the faded wallpaper. Their eyes shone faintly in the dim light, unblinking, all fixed on him. Daniel stumbled backward until his legs hit the bed. His voice came out ragged, torn. "I can't stay here. Please, please just let me go." The pale clerk stepped forward from the crowd. Its head cocked, smile stretching until its cracked lips bled. "You already stay," it gurgled. The TV flickered on, static buzzing, then shifting into an image. Daniel froze as he saw himself on the screen, sitting on the bed, soaked, broken, surrounded by figures. But the version of him in the image wasn't moving. His eyes were blank, his skin pale, his body sagging like theirs. The screen shifted. Now it showed another guest, a young woman curled on the bed, crying into her hands. Then another, an older man pacing and screaming at the walls. One by one, the screen cycled through faces, hundreds of them. All trapped. All guests of room 6. Daniel fell to his knees, hands clawing at his face. No, I won't be one of them. The clerk knelt in front of him, pressing its cold, dripping forehead against his. Daniel's vision blurred as water seeped into his eyes, his nose, his mouth. He gagged, choking, thrashing, but the clerk's voice filled his head, drowning every thought. Check in. Stay. Forever. Daniel's scream gurgled into silence as black water filled his lungs. His body sagged, going slack, pale, glassy-eyed. The figures melted back into the walls, leaving only one new shape behind. A man sitting motionless on the edge of the bed. Soaked. Blank-eyed. Another permanent guest of room 6. Outside, the neon sign flickered and buzzed, casting its cold glow across the wet asphalt. Vacancy. Always. Rain hissed steady across the parking lot, neon buzzing overhead. Room SIX's curtains were drawn tight again, its light dim and steady. From outside, nothing seemed unusual, just another roadside stop waiting for weary travelers. A pair of headlights cut through the mist. A sedan pulled into the lot, tires crunching over gravel. The driver, a woman in her 30s, rubbed her eyes, exhaustion etched deep into her face. A child stirred in the back seat, mumbling in half-sleep. The woman sighed with relief when she saw the glowing sign. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. She parked near the office, glancing at her sleeping son in the mirror before stepping out into the drizzle. Her shoes splashed in shallow puddles as she crossed to the office door. The faint bell above the frame jingled when she entered. Inside, the air was damp, humming with fluorescent light. Behind the counter, a man sat waiting. Hair thinning, glasses low on his nose. His expression was blank, voice flat as he slid a clipboard toward her through the plexiglass. Just you? He asked. She smiled wearily. Me and my boy. We just need a room for the night. The man nodded, eyes flicking down at the paper. His finger tapped the empty line. 48 a night. Pay up front. The woman signed her name, slid her card across. The man swiped it slowly, then handed her a brass key on a cracked plastic tag. Room 6. The woman hesitated, key cold in her palm. For the briefest moment, she thought she heard something beyond the office walls, a faint knock, slow and deliberate. But it faded as quickly as it came. She smiled politely. Thank you? The man didn't respond. His glassy eyes followed her out as the bell jingled once more. Back in the car, the boy sat up groggily. Where are we, Mom? A motel, she whispered, starting the engine. Just for tonight. They drove slowly across the lot. Room SIX's curtains shifted slightly, as though someone inside was watching. The woman unlocked the door to room 6, juggling her son's backpack and her own small suitcase. The brass key was damp in her hand, colder than the rain should have made it. She forced a chuckle, muttering, Guess the air conditioner's working overtime. Her son shuffled in behind her, rubbing his eyes. Smells weird. The room greeted them with the same musty odor of old carpet and mildew masked by lemon cleaner. The AC rattled faintly in the corner, a tired heartbeat that never stopped. The bed was made, stiff and sunken at the middle, but to a weary traveler it promised rest. The woman set her things down with a sigh of relief. It's just one night, she said. We'll be back on the road tomorrow. Her son pressed his face to the window, peering through the curtain gap at the empty lot beyond. I think somebody's out there. She froze mid-motion, heart thudding. What do you mean? There's a man. Standing by the light. The woman crossed the room quickly, tugging the curtain closed. It's just a shadow. Go brush your teeth. He lingered, frowning, but obeyed. She tried to shake the unease, but the key on the dresser caught her eye. Water was pooling around it, dripping slowly onto the wood. She reached out with trembling fingers, but before she could touch it, a sound came from the window. Knock. 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 Soft. Deliberate. Her breath hitched. She turned slowly, staring at the curtains. The knocks came again, louder this time. Her son stepped out of the bathroom, toothbrush still in his mouth. "Mom? Did you hear? Go lie down," she whispered sharply, her voice breaking. But even as she spoke, the TV flared to life on its own. Static filled the room, loud and sharp. The boy tilted his head, eyes fixed on the screen. "Mom, that's us." The static cleared enough to reveal an image, grainy black and white footage of room 6. The mother and son stood in the center, their figures filmed from somewhere high in the corner. The woman spun, heart slamming against her ribs. The curtains were still shut tight in the room, but on the TV, they swayed open, rain-blurred glass visible. And a pale face stared in. Her son dropped the toothbrush, backing toward the bed. "Mom!" The woman grabbed him, pulling him close, her eyes locked on the screen. The face in the window pressed closer, flattening against the glass. Water streamed down, smearing its features until it was almost unrecognizable. Almost. Her stomach dropped when she realized the face was a man's, young, dark-haired, with wide, terrified eyes. His skin was bloated and pale, but there was still enough left to see. A man who had been here before. The woman's hand shook as she reached for the remote, jabbing the power button. The screen stayed on, static buzzing louder. The image shifted. Now the pale man was inside the room on the TV, standing directly behind her and her son. She whipped around. Nothing was there. The TV crackled again. The man's lips moved, though the sound was warped, bubbling, like water over gravel. "Leave, before it's too late." The woman's knees weakened. She dragged her son toward the door, fumbling at the knob. It didn't turn. The lock sat open, but the door wouldn't move, as though welded to the frame. Her son whimpered, burying his face in her side. From the TV came another voice. Low, guttural, distorted. "You checked in." The lights flickered. The AC sputtered and died, leaving the room in oppressive silence. Then, 3 knocks at the window. Slow. Even. The boy's small voice broke through, trembling. "Mom, he's closer now." The woman turned toward the curtains, every nerve screaming not to. The fabric stirred gently, though no breeze blew. A shadow stretched across it, tall, bent, dripping. The knocking grew louder, shaking the glass. "Knock. Knock. Knock." The boy screamed. The woman yanked her son toward the bed, heart hammering. "Stay behind me," she gasped, though her voice shook so hard it barely carried. The window rattled violently now, the glass trembling in its frame. Curtains billowed though the air was still. The television flickered between static and grainy footage of the room, always a few seconds ahead, showing the window already shattering while, in reality, it still held. Her son clutched her arm. "He's coming in!" The glass exploded inward with a deafening crash. Shards scattered across the carpet, glittering in the pale light of the buzzing sign outside. Water poured in, flooding across the floor, soaking everything in seconds. And with it, the figure stepped inside. It ducked low to enter, shoulders scraping the frame. Its skin was swollen, stretched too thin, its mouth cracked into a jagged grin. Water streamed from its hair, pooling at its feet. The woman shoved her son behind her, backing toward the far wall. "Stay away!" she screamed, her voice breaking. The figure tilted its head, glassy eyes fixed on her. Its lips moved, water spilling out as it spoke in that wet, guttural voice. "You signed. You stay." The woman shook her head violently. "I didn't sign anything. I didn't." On the TV, the image shifted. It showed the office, the ledger, the clipboard. And there, in shaky black ink, her name was already written. Her stomach dropped. The boy whimpered. "Mom!" The figure moved closer, each step squelching in the rising flood. Its swollen hand reached out, palm dripping, fingers stretching toward her. The woman grabbed a jagged shard of glass from the floor, brandishing it like a knife. "Don't touch him!" The figure paused. Its grin widened. Then it pointed not at her, but at the boy. The TV flared bright, the static replaced with 3 words scrawled in dripping black letters. The child stays. The woman's chest constricted. No, she whispered, clutching her son tighter. You're not taking him. You hear me? You're not taking him. The figure's eyes rolled back, glassy whites gleaming in the flicker of the TV. Its hand remained outstretched, water pouring from its fingertips, soaking the carpet deeper. Around the room, shadows thickened, stretching upward into the shapes of more figures, their pale faces blinking into existence against the walls. The boy buried his face in her side. Mom, I want to go home. She raised the shard of glass higher, her own hand trembling so badly it cut into her palm. Blood mingled with the water, curling into the flood in crimson swirls. Stay back! The figure didn't move closer. It only grinned, tilting its head as though listening to something distant. Then, in one sudden motion, it pointed at the closet. The door rattled. Knock. 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 The TV flickered, showing the closet door bursting open, water gushing out. The real door shuddered against its hinges, swelling with the sound of rushing water behind it. The woman backed toward the bathroom, dragging her son. She locked them inside, pressing her weight against the door. Her breath came ragged, her body shaking. From the other side, the flood roared louder, wood splintering as the closet strained. The boy whimpered, covering his ears. He's in here, Mom. He's already in here. She turned sharply. Don't say that, don't. But then she saw it. The bathroom mirror rippled, water streaming down its surface from nowhere. And in the reflection, her son wasn't standing beside her. He was standing in the flood, pale and dripping, his eyes wide and glassy. She spun in panic. Her real son still clutched her legs, sobbing. But the reflection smiled. A wet voice gurgled from the mirror. Room 6 always needs more. The woman staggered back, dragging her son away from the mirror. Her pulse hammered so hard she thought her ribs would split. The reflection grinned wider, water running down its cheeks, its lips parting to let more black liquid spill across the sink. Her son clung to her legs, sobbing. Mom, it's not me. Don't let it be me. She pressed him against her chest, whispering frantically. I won't. I promise. I won't let them touch you. The mirror shuddered. Cracks spread across the glass like veins, water seeping from each fracture. The reflection pressed its pale hands against the inside of the mirror, as though trying to push through. Behind them, the closet finally gave way. A crash shook the room as a torrent of water exploded into the motel, carrying with it the bloated figures. They poured across the carpet, dragging themselves forward with stiff, jerking motions, their mouths open in gurgling whispers. Stay. 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 The woman shoved open the bathroom window. It was narrow, rusted, but she forced it wider, cutting her arms as the frame bit into her skin. Climb! She screamed, shoving her son upward. He scrambled, terrified, squeezing through into the storm outside. His small body slipped free, vanishing into the night. She tried to follow, but a cold, bloated hand clamped onto her ankle. She screamed, kicking violently, but more hands grabbed, dragging her back from the window. Her son's voice cried faintly from outside. Mom! Come on! She clawed at the frame, nails breaking against the rust, but the flood swallowed her legs, then her waist. Her scream tore through the room as she disappeared beneath black water, the mirror exploding behind her into shards and spray. The boy's cries were cut off by the slam of the bathroom door. And then silence. The next morning, the motel stood quiet. The office light buzzed steadily, the neon sign flickered, and room 6's curtains were drawn. Inside, the bed was freshly made. The bathroom mirror was whole again, and a brass key waited neatly on the dresser. Vacancy. The boy stumbled across the gravel lot, barefoot, soaked in rain. His chest hitched with sobs as he turned back toward room 6. The curtains were closed again, no light shining through. The bathroom window hung slightly ajar, swaying in the storm. Mom! he cried, his voice breaking. "Mom, come out!" Only the hiss of rain answered. He darted to the office, slipping in a puddle before bursting through the door. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting the counter in its harsh glow. Behind the plexiglass, the clerk sat waiting. Pale, dripping, eyes glassy. The boy froze, trembling. The clerk slid the clipboard through the slot. A pen rested neatly on top. The page bore a single line. "Check in, mother's name. Guests, too." The boy's throat tightened. His name was already written there, in shaky ink, beneath hers. The clerk's cracked lips parted, and water dribbled down its chin. "You stay, too?" The boy shook his head violently, tears mixing with rainwater. "No! I didn't sign! I didn't!" The clerk tilted its head. "Children don't sign. Parents sign for them." The pen rolled toward him, leaving a wet streak across the page. He stumbled back, shaking, then bolted out the office door into the storm. His legs pumped wildly, slipping on the flooded lot until he reached the highway's shoulder. Cars hissed past in the rain, headlights flashing across his small, shivering figure. He waved his arms, screaming for help. A horn blared. Brakes screeched. A semi roared past, missing him by inches, its spray knocking him onto the soaked grass. He scrambled up again, coughing, eyes burning. "Help! Please! Someone!" Headlights appeared down the road, growing larger, slowing as they neared. A sedan pulled onto the shoulder. The driver's door opened, and a woman leaned out, her face etched with concern. "Sweetheart, are you okay? What are you doing out here?" The boy staggered toward her, desperate. "Please, you have to go. Don't stop here. Don't go to the motel." Her brow furrowed. "Motel?" She glanced past him, squinting through the rain. Behind them, the neon sign flickered faintly in the mist. "Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy." The boy grabbed the woman's sleeve, tugging with all his strength. "Please! Don't go there! Don't stop!" The woman's eyes flicked between his pale, shivering face and the glowing motel sign down the road. Her mouth tightened. "You're freezing. Let's get you in the car. We'll figure this out." "No!" he cried, voice cracking. "That's where my mom is! They took her! Don't go there, please!" Her expression softened, pity mingling with unease. She crouched to his level, brushing wet hair from his forehead. "Honey, you're scared. It's just a motel. Let me help you." The boy shook his head violently, tears cutting through the rain on his cheeks. "It's not just a motel. If you go, you won't come back." The woman hesitated, then stood, glancing again at the flickering neon in the distance. Her face hardened with adult logic, unwilling to believe the terror in his voice. "Maybe your mother's looking for you. If she's there, we should." The boy screamed. "No!" He broke free from her grasp, stumbling backward into the wet grass. For a heartbeat, the only sounds were the rain and the hum of the car engine. Then knock. Soft. Deliberate. It came from the sedan's rear window. The woman froze. Slowly, her eyes shifted toward the sound. Through the rain-streaked glass, a pale face pressed against the window, wide eyes staring out. Water smeared the glass around it. Her breath caught. The boy screamed, pointing. "See? It's already here!" The rear door clicked open on its own. The woman stumbled back in horror as water spilled onto the pavement, pooling around her feet. The boy turned and ran into the storm, barefoot, heart pounding, while behind him the woman's scream split the night. He didn't look back. But the motel's neon glow followed him no matter which direction he ran. Vacancy. Always. The boy ran until his legs gave out, collapsing in the wet grass along the highway. His chest heaved, breath tearing in ragged bursts. His small body shook from cold and fear, but worse than that was the truth sinking in. There was no escape. Everywhere he turned, the glow of the sign followed, sometimes distant, sometimes looming, but always there. Vacancy. Headlights swept across him. Another car slowed, But he scrambled back into the ditch, waving his arms frantically. "Don't stop! Please keep going!" he screamed. The driver honked, swerved away, and disappeared into the storm. He curled into himself, sobbing. "I want Mom. I want to go home." The rain slowed to a drizzle. Crickets stirred in the grass. For the first time since the nightmare began, the air felt still, almost calm. The boy lifted his head. A glow flickered just beyond the tree line, faint but steady. He knew it before he saw it. His stomach dropped. The motel sat quietly among the trees. Somehow, impossibly, it had moved, or he had. The row of doors stretched in the shadows, the office light buzzing faintly. Room 6's curtains swayed. The boy staggered to his feet. He turned to run, but a voice stopped him. "Sweetheart." His heart lurched. It was his mother's voice. He spun back. She stood at the edge of the lot, her hair wet, her clothes clinging to her. Her smile was soft, reassuring, the way it always was when he had nightmares. "Mom?" His voice cracked, desperate. She nodded, beckoning. "It's okay, baby. Come inside. It's warm now. We can rest." He took a step forward, then froze. Something was wrong. Her eyes. Too wide. Too glassy. Water dripping from her lips with every word. The boy stumbled back, shaking his head. "You're not her." Her smile widened, splitting at the corners. "She signed for you. That means you're mine." Figures began to emerge from the other rooms, pale and dripping, surrounding him again. The boy's scream ripped into the night, carried away by the buzzing neon. The boy's scream echoed through the storm, but the figures didn't flinch. They pressed closer, their waterlogged feet slapping against the pavement, their pale arms stretching outward. He stumbled back until his heels hit the ditch, nearly toppling. "Stay away! Leave me alone!" His mother's likeness tilted its head, her wet hair sticking to her face. "Don't be scared. You'll never be alone again. That's the promise of 6. I don't want 6, he cried, voice breaking. "I just want home." The figures stopped at once, as if the word cut through them. For a heartbeat, silence fell. The only sound was the faint buzz of the neon, sputtering in the mist. Then the curtain of room 6 twitched. Slowly, deliberately, it pulled aside. A shadow moved behind the glass. The boy's legs trembled, but he felt something shift inside. Anger, fear, defiance, all twisting into one. He scooped a rock from the ditch and hurled it at the glowing sign. The stone cracked against the tube. Sparks burst in the rain. Half the letters flickered out, leaving only Haven Vac. The motel seemed to shudder. The figures hissed in unison, their voices bubbling and warped. Water streamed faster from their eyes and mouths. His not-mother screeched, a sound that made the air vibrate. "You cannot break what has no end." The boy's hands balled into fists. "Then I'll burn it." He turned and ran, not toward the highway, not away from the sign, but toward the dark tree-line. He crashed through wet branches and thorny vines, rain stinging his face. Behind him, the figures surged after, their steps pounding in unnatural rhythm. Branches clawed at him, mud sucked at his feet, but he pushed deeper until the trees opened into a clearing. In the center stood the old farmhouse, the one Daniel had seen. Its roof sagged, windows black, the front door hanging ajar. The boy froze, chest heaving. The figures were already in the trees behind him, closing in. The only way left was forward. The boy's breath came in ragged bursts as he stepped into the clearing. The farmhouse loomed ahead, skeletal against the storm, its timbers black with rot. The door creaked open wider, as if it had been waiting for him. Behind him, the pale figures broke through the tree-line. Dozens of them. Their gurgling whispers filled the clearing, rising and falling like waves. "Stay, stay, stay." The boy bolted toward the porch. His bare feet slapped the wet wood as he darted inside, shoving the sagging door shut. The latch clattered, useless against the weight of the storm and whatever followed. The interior reeked of mildew and stagnant water. Wallpaper peeled in long strips, curling down like dead skin. Black mold crawled across the ceiling. The floor sagged, puddles gathered in warped boards. But the house was silent. Too silent. He edged forward, trembling, his small hands brushing against the damp walls. In the far corner, he saw a staircase, the same one Daniel had climbed. It groaned as if in anticipation. A faint sound drifted down from above. Knock. 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 The boy squeezed his eyes shut, whispering to himself, "Don't listen. Don't look." But when he opened them, his mother stood at the foot of the stairs. Her smile was warm again, familiar. Her eyes no longer glassy, but soft, tired, the way they had been before this nightmare. She held out her hand. "Come with me, sweetheart. We'll go home together." His heart lurched. He wanted to believe. He wanted to run into her arms and bury his face in her shoulder. But then he saw it. Water dripping steadily from her fingertips, pooling at her feet. He shook his head, voice breaking. "You're not her." Her smile cracked, splitting at the corners until it bled. Her head tilted too far, neck bending with a snap. And the knocking upstairs grew louder. The boy staggered backward, his spine hitting the damp wall. His mother's likeness twitched, head jerking side to side as water poured from her eyes. She took one step toward him, then another, her hand stretching forward. The knocking upstairs thundered now, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. Knock. 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 The boy bolted for the staircase. He bounded up 2 steps at a time, his small hands clutching the rail, splinters biting his palms. Behind him, her voice warped, deep and gurgling. "Come back. You belong to me." He didn't look back. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched long and dark. Doors lined both sides, swollen with water damage, their knobs rattling. From behind each came faint whispers, rising in unison, "Stay, stay, stay." At the far end was one door, closed tight. The knocking pounded from behind it, louder with each step he took. He crept closer, water pooling at his ankles, leaking from under every door. The air was icy, his breath puffing in front of him. His small body shook, but something inside told him this was it. The heart of it all. The final door shuddered, the knob rattling violently. Then silence. The boy stood frozen, chest heaving, waiting for the next knock. Instead, a voice whispered through the wood, soft, trembling, achingly familiar. "Sweetheart, it's really me. Open the door." His throat closed. "Mom?" "Yes," the voice whimpered. "Please. They're keeping me in here. You have to help me." Tears blurred his vision. He reached out with a shaking hand, fingers brushing the cold brass knob. From the other doors, the whispers swelled, angry now. "Stay. Stay. Stay." He hesitated. His heart screamed to believe it, to open the door and free her. But his gut twisted, a cold certainty pressing deep. What if it wasn't her? The knob turned under his hand. The knob turned on its own, cold metal grinding against his palm. The boy yanked his hand back, stumbling a step away. The door creaked open an inch, then another, until a strip of darkness bled into the hallway. "Sweetheart," the voice whimpered again, softer now, full of desperate pleading. "It's so dark. Please let me out." His tears burned hot against his cheeks. It sounded like her. Exactly like her. The way she whispered when she woke him from nightmares, gentle, safe. But the air leaking from the crack was foul, damp and heavy, reeking of stagnant water. And within that darkness something shifted. Not one figure, but many, writhing over each other in silence. The boy's small hands balled into fists. His chest heaved. "You're not her," he whispered. "You're not." The voice broke into a low, wet chuckle. Then another joined it. And another. Until the sound of laughter gurgled through the hall from behind the door, dozens of voices overlapping, bubbling like drowning throats. The door burst open. A torrent of black water crashed into the hall, sweeping the boy off his feet. He slammed against the wall, his head spinning as the flood swallowed everything. Figures rose from the surge, pale and grinning, their mouths spilling endless streams of water. The boy thrashed, kicking, clawing for air. His small body was dragged toward the open doorway, toward that writhing mass of shadows within. Their voices filled his head, drowning his thoughts. "Stay! Stay! Stay!" he screamed, the sound breaking into a gurgle as water filled his mouth. His fingers scraped desperately at the molding, splinters digging into his skin. Just before he was pulled through the threshold, the lights above flared white. And he was no longer in the house. He was standing in the motel office, soaked and shivering, the clipboard on the counter in front of him. His name was already written at the bottom of the page. The clerk grinned through cracked lips, dripping water onto the ledger. "Welcome home, little one." The boy's chest heaved as he stared at the clipboard. His name, written neatly, in a hand that wasn't his, gleamed in the weak fluorescent light. Droplets from the clerk's pale fingers spattered the paper, smearing the ink until it bled across the page. His throat tightened. I didn't sign it." The clerk leaned forward, its glassy eyes unblinking. "Parents signed for children. Your place was claimed." The boy shook his head violently, backing toward the door. "No! She wouldn't do that! She wouldn't leave me here!" But the office door didn't budge when he shoved it. The bell above it jangled once, then went still. The TV behind the counter flickered on, static hissing before an image formed. The motel room. Room 6. On the bed sat his mother, soaked, pale, her eyes blank. She turned her head slowly toward the camera, lips parting in a smile too wide, water pouring down her chin. The boy's knees buckled. "No, no!" The clerk's grin widened, teeth cracked and jagged. "She rests. Now you will, too!" The office light flickered, buzzing louder. Shadows pulled at the corners, stretching across the floor like dark water. Pale hands emerged from the gloom, crawling toward him on all sides. The boy stumbled back against the counter, sobbing. "I don't want to stay. Please let me go home." The clerk tilted its head, voice bubbling low and guttural. "You are home." Hands wrapped around his ankles, icy and dripping, pulling him down into the dark. His scream tore through the office as he was dragged beneath the rising flood, clipboard tumbling from the counter into the black water. The bell above the door jingled once. Then silence. The office light steadied. The counter was empty again. The clipboard lay dry, a fresh sheet waiting, blank except for 2 words at the top. Check-in. The brass key to room 6 gleamed faintly beside it. Vacancy. Always. The storm passed by morning. The sky was washed pale gray, and the asphalt steamed faintly in the weak sunlight. The motel stood silent, curtains drawn, doors closed, as if nothing had happened. By noon, a rusted pickup pulled into the lot. A man stepped out, middle-aged, with road dust caked on his jeans and weariness etched in the lines of his face. He shaded his eyes against the glow of the sign. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. He muttered under his breath. About time. Thought I'd never find a place out here. The lot was nearly empty. A couple of cars sat abandoned, streaked with rainwater and leaves. He thought nothing of it, just long-term guests or folks who'd checked out early. Inside the office, the fluorescent light hummed overhead. The air smelled faintly of mildew. Behind the counter, a clerk looked up from the ledger. Thin hair, glasses, face expressionless. The man smiled tiredly. Got a room? The clerk slid a clipboard through the slot. 48 a night. Pay up front. The man chuckled. Cheapest I've seen in a while. He scrawled his name on the line and slid his card across. The clerk swiped it slowly, handed it back, then pushed a brass key toward him. Room 6. The man took it, turning the tag in his fingers. Much obliged. The clerk's eyes lingered on him, unblinking. Checkout's at 11. Back outside, the man loaded his small duffel over his shoulder and walked the row of doors. Room 6 sat waiting, its curtains swaying faintly though no breeze stirred. He unlocked the door, muttering, "Let's see how bad this dump is." The hinges groaned as the door swung open. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, carpet still damp from the storm. The bed was neatly made, the TV silent. He dropped his bag, stretched his back with a sigh. From the dresser, the brass key slid an inch on its own, leaving a wet streak across the wood. The man frowned, reaching for it. That was when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate raps at the window. The man froze, his hand hovering over the key. His eyes darted to the window. The curtains were drawn, but the fabric stirred faintly, as though someone stood just beyond. He chuckled nervously to himself. Damn kids! He strode over and yanked the curtains aside. Nothing. Just a lot, shimmering under the weak daylight. A lone puddle reflected the neon sign's buzz. No kids. No prankster. He let the curtain fall shut, shaking his head. Long drive. Brains playing tricks. The man collapsed onto the bed, boots and all, groaning as his body melted into the sagging mattress. He closed his eyes. The steady rattle of the AC filled the silence. Knock. 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 His eyes flew open. The sound was louder now, firmer. Not playful. Not hesitant. All right, cut the crap, he barked, stomping back to the window. He yanked the curtain wide again. No one. But this time, there were handprints. Pale smears streaked down the glass, as if someone had pressed their wet palms against it only moments before. The man's jaw tightened. Damn weird. He turned away, rummaging through his bag for his cigarettes. When he lit one, the lighter's flame flickered wildly, though the air in the room was still. Smoke curled toward the closet. The door rattled faintly. The man exhaled a plume of smoke, frowning. What the hell? Knock. This time, from inside the closet. He froze. His cigarette trembled between his fingers. Knock. 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 The sound reverberated through the wood, patient and deliberate. He swallowed hard, nerves prickling. Ain't funny, he muttered. The knob turned. The knob twisted slowly, metal grinding against rusted threads. The man's cigarette ash fell onto the carpet as his hand instinctively went to the pocket knife clipped to his jeans. The closet door creaked open an inch. Darkness seeped out, damp and foul, carrying with it the stench of stagnant water. Who's in there? His voice was gruff, but thin around the edges. He flicked open the knife, the blade trembling in his hand. Silence. Then a wet shuffle inside. The man braced himself, kicked the door wide. The wood slammed against the wall, revealing only blackness within. The small overhead bulb flickered on its own, sputtering once before casting a dim yellow glow. The closet was empty. Just damp clothes hangers swaying slowly, dripping onto the floor. He exhaled a shaky laugh, pressing a hand to his chest. Damn dump. He bent to pick up his duffel, but froze. Water pooled at his boots. Not dripping from above, not seeping from the carpet, pouring steadily from the closet, dark and cold. It spread across the floor in seconds, soaking his jeans to the ankles. The hangers clinked together. Something moved in the back of the closet. A pale hand gripped the doorframe, nails jagged and blackened. Another followed, pulling a shape forward. The man stumbled back, blade raised. Stay the hell back! The figure crawled out, hunched low, its head lolling at an unnatural angle. Hair hung in wet ropes, eyes wide and glassy. It grinned, water spilling from its lips. You signed, it gurgled. The man's knife slipped from his hand, clattering uselessly to the soaked carpet. The figure rose taller, impossibly tall, until its head nearly scraped the ceiling. Its arms stretched wide, dripping, as the water climbed higher. The TV buzzed on, flickering with static. On the screen, the man's reflection stared back, soaked, pale, his eyes already glassy. The closet door slammed shut behind the figure. The man's breath came in ragged bursts, his boots sloshing in the rising water. What the hell are you? He rasped, voice breaking. The figure didn't answer. Its grin widened, lips splitting, black water gushing down its chest. Its glassy eyes rolled back as it stepped closer, the flood surging with each movement. The man backed against the bed, fumbling blindly for the knife he dropped. His fingers scraped the soaked carpet, but the blade was gone, swallowed by the dark water. On the TV, the static cleared. The screen showed the motel office. The clerk stood behind the counter, ledger open, a fresh page waiting. The man's name was already scrawled neatly across it, the ink bleeding as if still wet. His chest seized. "I didn't sign that!" The clerk on the screen lifted its pale eyes, meeting his gaze through the glass. Its cracked lips parted, and his own voice spilled out from the speaker, distorted, bubbling. "I checked in." The man clutched his head, shaking it violently. No, I didn't." Cold hands wrapped around his wrists. He screamed, thrashing, but more hands surfaced from the flood, pale and bloated, gripping his arms, his legs, dragging him down. The water rose to his chest, his throat, his mouth. He choked as black liquid forced its way in, filling his lungs, silencing his cries. The last thing he saw before the water closed over his head was his own reflection on the TV, sitting motionless on the edge of the bed, eyes blank, skin pale, another guest of room 6. The screen flickered. The office reappeared. The ledger page flipped. A fresh line waited. The closet door eased shut with a quiet click. By morning, room 6 was dry again. The bed neatly made. The key resting clean on the dresser. And outside, the neon sign buzzed faintly through the mist. Vacancy. Always. Dusk settled heavy across the highway. The sky bled orange into gray as another storm brewed, clouds curling low and dark. A minivan rolled off the exit, headlights flicking across the wet pavement. Inside, a family of 4 sat weary from the road, 2 parents in their 30s, 2 children asleep in the back, heads lolling against seatbelts. The father exhaled with relief when the glowing sign cut through the mist. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. Finally, he muttered, pulling into the lot. "Kids crash the second we get in a room." The mother stirred awake, rubbing her eyes. "It looks kind of rundown, doesn't it? Better than another hour on the road," he replied. "We just need a bed." The lot was quiet, nearly empty. A few cars sat crooked in their spaces, windows fogged. The father parked near the office, stepping out into the humid air. His shoes splashed in shallow puddles as he crossed to the door. The bell jingled softly when he pushed inside. The clerk sat behind the counter, pale face blank, eyes hidden behind glasses. The fluorescent light buzzed above. "Evening," the father said, polite but hurried. "We need a room for the night. 2 adults, 2 kids." The clerk slid the clipboard through the slot. His finger tapped the blank line. "$48 a night. Pay up front." The father chuckled. "For 4 of us? Guess we lucked out." He scribbled his name, slid his card across. The clerk swiped it slowly, then pushed a brass key forward. "Room 6. The father frowned, glancing at the cracked tag. "That the only one?" The clerk's grin flickered, thin and wrong. "Always." Unease prickled the back of his neck. But exhaustion weighed heavier. He pocketed the key, muttered a thanks, and returned to the van. The children stirred as the car rolled up to room 6. Its curtains swayed faintly though the air was still. The father unlocked the door. Inside, the bed was neatly made. The AC rattled. The smell of lemon cleaner clung to the air. The children tumbled onto the mattress, half asleep. The parents set down their bags, exchanging a weary smile. Then, from the closet, knock, knock, knock. The knock was soft but deliberate, echoing through the small room. Both parents froze. The father glanced at the closet, his brow furrowing. "You hear that?" he whispered. The mother nodded slowly, her face pale. The children, still half asleep, didn't stir. Another knock. Louder this time. The father forced a laugh, though his throat was tight. "Probably just the pipes. Old place like this, it's bound to." Knock. 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 The closet door rattled violently. The children sat bolt upright, wide-eyed. "Daddy," the older one whispered. Someone's in there. The father stepped forward, trying to sound braver than he felt. Stay on the bed. Don't move. He reached for the knob. The mother grabbed his arm. Don't. Please. But before he could answer, the TV flickered on. Static roared, filling the room with white light. The screen cleared just enough to show the closet door from inside. A pale hand pressed against the wood, nails dragging slowly downward. Another joined it. And another. Dozens of them, clawing silently, waiting. The father stumbled back, breath ragged. What the hell? The closet burst open. Water poured out in a black wave, sweeping across the carpet, soaking the bed. The children screamed, clinging to their mother as the flood rose around them. Figures crawled from the darkness, pale, bloated, dripping. Their eyes were wide and glassy, their mouths spilling endless streams of water. Stay, they whispered in unison, voices gurgling. Stay. The mother clutched her children, sobbing. The father tried to push the door open, but it wouldn't budge. His fists pounded against the wood until they bled. The clerk's voice filled the room, bubbling from the static of the TV. Room 6 welcomes you. The figures closed in. Cold hands gripped the family, pulling them down into the flood. Their screams gurgled, drowned, until the room was silent once more. By morning, the bed was freshly made. The keys sat neatly on the dresser. And outside, the neon sign buzzed faintly. Vacancy. Always. The storm returned with nightfall, cloaking the highway in mist. Travelers passed without slowing, unaware of the motel crouched in the shadows, its neon sign pulsing faintly. But some always stopped. A young couple in their 20s pulled into the lot just after midnight. Their car sputtered, smoke curling from under the hood. The driver slammed the wheel, muttering curses, while his girlfriend rubbed her temples. We'll never make it to Dallas tonight, she sighed. He spotted the sign through the rain-streaked windshield. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. His relief was instant. Looks like luck's finally on our side. They parked near the office, stepping out into the drizzle. The bell jingled as they entered. The clerk sat waiting, pale and still behind the glass. His glasses reflected the buzzing light overhead. Room for 2? The man asked. The clerk slid the clipboard forward. 48 a night. Pay up front. They exchanged a glance, amused at the low price, and signed without hesitation. The brass key slid across the counter, wet streaks following its path. Room 6. The girlfriend wrinkled her nose. Smells like mildew in here. The clerk's smile cracked faintly. It's always room 6. Uneasy, they left quickly, bags in hand. Inside, the room was plain but dry. The AC hummed faintly. They collapsed on the bed, exhaustion overtaking unease. But neither noticed the curtains sway though the air was still, or the water seeping slowly from beneath the closet door. At 2 a.m., the girlfriend stirred. She sat up, frowning. Knock. 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 She nudged her boyfriend awake, whispering, Someone's here. They both stared at the closet as the knob began to turn. The couple clutched each other as the closet knob rattled, water dripping from its brass surface. The boyfriend forced a laugh, his voice unsteady. It's just bad plumbing. These old dumps. The door shuddered violently, cutting him off. A pale hand burst through the crack, fingers swollen and veined, nails scraping deep grooves into the wood. The girlfriend screamed, scrambling off the bed. The boyfriend grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and hurled it at the closet. The bulb shattered, sparks sizzling as water gushed out, rising over their ankles. The closet door swung wide. Figures poured into the room, crawling on all fours, their limbs jerking like broken marionettes. Water streamed from their mouths, gurgling voices overlapping in a single word. Stay. The couple stumbled toward the door, but it wouldn't budge. The key clinked against the dresser where they'd left it, glinting faintly in the static light of the TV. The boyfriend shoved his girlfriend toward the window. Go! Smash it! She grabbed the chair, swinging it against the glass. It cracked, but didn't break. Again, harder. The third blow shattered the pane outward. Rain slashed in, the neon sign buzzing faintly beyond. She hauled herself through, screaming for him to follow. But pale hands gripped his legs, dragging him backward into the flood. He thrashed, shouting, "Run!" before the water swallowed his cry. Her bloodied hands clutched the frame as she pulled herself onto the pavement outside. She staggered to her feet, sobbing, turning back toward the window. Dozens of pale faces stared back at her through the rain. Her boyfriend among them now, eyes glassy, mouth spilling water, already one of them. She collapsed to her knees, screaming. The office bell jingled faintly. Inside, the ledger turned a page. A fresh line waited. Vacancy. Always. The girlfriend stumbled across the lot, soaked and bleeding, her screams swallowed by the storm. She didn't stop until she reached the highway shoulder, where headlights blurred through the rain. She waved frantically, her arms flailing, her voice hoarse. A car slowed, then pulled over. The driver, a trucker with tired eyes, leaned out his window. "Jesus, miss, what happened to you?" She clawed at his door. "Don't stop here. You have to keep going. Don't go near the motel." The trucker frowned, squinting past her toward the neon glow in the mist. "Motel? You mean that one?" Her chest tightened. "Please, just drive. Don't let it see you." The man shook his head, muttering, "You're out of your damn mind." He climbed out, steadying her with a firm grip. "Come on, I'll get you inside, get you dry." "No!" she shrieked, jerking away. "If you stop, if you go in, you'll never leave." He raised his hands, palms out. All right. Easy. Let's just get back on the road, huh?" But then, knock. 3 deliberate raps sounded against the truck's rear cab window. The trucker froze. Slowly, he turned his head. Through the rain-streaked glass, a pale face pressed against the window. Wide eyes. A dripping grin. The woman collapsed, sobbing. "It followed you. It follows everyone." The trucker's face drained of color. He staggered backward, muttering curses. But when he looked down, his boots were already submerged in water that hadn't been there a moment ago. It pooled across the asphalt, black and cold, spreading outward from the motel's glow. The woman crawled to the grass, clawing at the earth to get away. She didn't dare look back as his screams joined the storm. By the time she turned, the truck was gone. The lot was empty. Only the neon sign buzzed faintly. Vacancy. Always. The woman staggered down the highway, barefoot and bleeding, each step heavier than the last. Her body screamed for rest, but she knew what waited if she stopped. The glow of the neon clung to her no matter how far she ran, sometimes faint on the horizon, sometimes looming just around the bend. She collapsed into the ditch, curling into herself. Rain plastered her hair to her face, mud soaking her skin. She whispered over and over, a prayer or a plea. "Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop." Her phone buzzed. She jolted upright, fumbling it from her pocket. The screen glowed through the rain. Unknown number. "Room 6 is ready." Her sob caught in her throat. She hurled the phone into the dark, listening as it splashed and vanished. A horn blared. She looked up, blinded by headlights. A car slowed, pulling onto the shoulder. A man's voice called out, "Hey! You okay?" She scrambled to her feet, waving frantically. "No! Keep going! Don't stop here!" The driver stepped out, a young man in a college hoodie. Concern lined his face. "You're hurt. Look, I'll call someone." The motel's neon buzzed behind him, glowing faintly through the mist. Her scream tore from her chest. "It's too late. You saw it." The young man turned, frowning at the sign. "What, that old place?" The curtains of room 6 shifted. Just slightly. Enough to be seen. He paled. "What the hell?" The air grew heavy, pressing down like water. Footsteps squelched in the ditch behind them. Pale figures emerged from the dark, their eyes fixed, their mouths open in silent streams of water. The woman shoved the young man hard. Run! They bolted into the trees, branches tearing at their skin, breath ragged. Behind them, the motel light pulsed through the mist, steady and patient. Vacancy. Always. Branches whipped across their faces as they ran deeper into the woods. The young man gasped, clutching his side, but the woman dragged him onward. Don't stop. If you stop, it takes you. Behind them, the pale figures moved between the trees with unnatural ease. Their feet made no sound on the wet earth, their dripping bodies gliding closer. The young man stumbled, nearly falling. What the hell is happening? The woman yanked him up. It's the motel. It doesn't let you leave once you see it. That's insane, he spat, but his voice cracked with terror. They broke into a clearing, the storm parting just enough to reveal the sagging outline of an old farmhouse. The woman froze, horror etched on her face. No, she whispered. Not again. The young man panted, confused. What is this place? The house loomed, black against the lightning-slashed sky. Its porch sagged, its roof bowed, windows yawning like sockets. The door hung ajar, swaying gently. The figures closed in at the tree line, their whispers bubbling in unison. Stay, stay, stay. The woman gripped his arm. We can't go in. It's worse inside. Thunder cracked overhead. Rain lashed harder. The figures drew closer, their glassy eyes unblinking. The young man's voice broke. We don't have a choice. The woman shook her head violently. That's what it wants. It makes you think there's no choice. The farmhouse door slammed shut, the sound echoing across the clearing like a gunshot. The neon sign flickered to life behind it, glowing faintly through the trees. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. The young man's knees buckled. It's everywhere. The woman clutched his hand, her eyes wide with despair. It's not a place. It's a trap. And once you're caught. The figures stepped into the clearing, water pooling at their feet. You never get out. The clearing filled with whispers. The figures advanced, their pale faces blank, their mouths gushing streams of water that soaked the earth. The neon glow behind the farmhouse flickered stronger, buzzing like an insect in their ears. The young man's chest heaved. He squeezed the woman's hand so tight her knuckles popped. There's gotta be a way out. There's always a way out. Her eyes darted frantically, wild with fear. No. The only way out is never to go in. And we already did. The figures pressed closer, a wall of dripping bodies. The air grew heavy, every breath thick and cold. Then the woman's gaze locked on the farmhouse roof. A rusted weather vane twisted in the wind, its jagged edges glinting faintly. Her mind flashed to fire, to destruction. Maybe if we destroy it. The young man frowned, shaking his head. Destroy what? The house? The sign, she said fiercely. It's the anchor. That's why it's always there. The neon pulsed brighter, as though hearing her. The figures lurched forward, sudden and violent. Hands reached out, icy and bloated, clutching at their clothes. The woman shrieked, tearing free. Run! They sprinted toward the farmhouse. The door slammed open on its own, the interior yawning black. The young man hesitated, but the figures were too close. Together, they plunged inside. The smell hit instantly, mildew, stagnant water, rot. The floor sagged under their weight, puddles rippling with every step. The whispers seeped from the walls, the vents, the very air. Stay. 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 The woman's eyes darted upward. A staircase loomed, crooked and dripping. At its top, faint light flickered, red, buzzing, the same as the neon outside. She grabbed his hand, pulling him toward it. We burn it. Whatever it takes, we burn it down. Behind them, the door slammed shut. The figures were already inside. The staircase groaned under their weight as they climbed, water dripping steadily from the ceiling above. Every step felt like wading deeper into a nightmare. The young man's grip on the banister slipped. It was slick with slime, cold as ice. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched long and dark. Doors lined either side, each rattling violently, as though something inside was desperate to get out. Water seeped from beneath them, pooling at their feet. The woman's eyes fixed on the end of the hall. A crimson flicker bled through the cracks of a door, the same relentless buzz as the motel sign. "That's it," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "That's the heart." The young man nodded, though his lips quivered. "Then we end it." They splashed down the hallway, whispers swelling louder with each step. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The doors banged, wood splintering, pale fingers clawing through the cracks. The woman snatched a broken chair leg from the floor, clutching it like a torch she didn't have. "We smash it, no matter what's inside." They reached the final door. The red glow leaked stronger, bathing their faces in sickly light. The knob rattled violently, though no one touched it. Together, they shoved it open. The room inside was small and bare, its walls dripping with black mold. In the center stood the neon sign, miniature but alive, buzzing and sparking, its glass tubes glowing with that same cruel word: vacancy. But it wasn't just a sign. The tubes pulsed like veins, the wires twitching like muscles. Water dripped from it, sizzling where it struck the floor. The woman raised the chair leg high. "Kill it!" She swung. The wood connected with a sharp crack, glass shattering, sparks flying. The sign screamed, not mechanically, but like a living thing, its buzz twisting into a wail. The house shook. Doors burst open. Figures spilled into the hall, surging toward them. The young man grabbed the shattered glass, his hands bleeding. "Again!" he shouted. Together, they tore at the sign, ripping tubes, smashing wires, drowning in sparks and screams. The red glow flared once, twice, then shattered into darkness. The whispers stopped. The silence was suffocating. For the first time since they had entered, the house was still. No whispers, no pounding doors, no rushing water. Only the sound of their ragged breathing and the drip of blood from the young man's torn hands. The shattered remains of the neon sign smoked on the floor, glass shards glowing faintly before sputtering out. The crimson light was gone. The woman's chest heaved. Did we do it?" The young man staggered back, clutching his bleeding palms. "Feels too easy," he muttered, eyes darting nervously. "Things like this don't just end." The hallway groaned around them. The mold-streaked walls seemed to breathe in and out, sighing like a long exhale. Water still seeped beneath the doors, but it no longer surged. Cautiously, they moved back toward the stairs. The doors stood ajar, empty. No pale faces peered through, no hands reached. The woman clutched the broken chair leg tighter. Maybe they're gone." They reached the bottom floor. The house groaned again, timbers splintering as though under immense strain. Cracks split across the walls, water gushing through. The front door blew open, slamming against the wall. Beyond the porch, the clearing was gone. Only black water stretched endlessly in every direction, reflecting faint starlight. The young man's stomach dropped. "We didn't kill it." The woman's face twisted. "We set it free." From the water, shapes rose one by one. Pale figures, hundreds of them, their bodies glistening, their glassy eyes fixed on the farmhouse. Their voices rose in unison, louder than ever, gurgling through ruined throats. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The water surged higher, swallowing the porch, rushing into the house. The floor buckled beneath their feet. The woman grabbed the young man's hand, screaming above the roar. "Run!" But there was nowhere left to run. The flood tore through the farmhouse, splintering wood and sweeping the pair off their feet. Daniel's nightmare had been a trickle compared to this, an ocean pouring in from every door, every crack, swallowing walls and ceiling alike. The young man and the woman clung to each other, gasping as the black water dragged them under. Figures surged with the current, pale arms clawing, pulling, their mouths open in bubbling chants. "Stay. Stay. Stay." The young man kicked free, thrashing upward, breaking the surface just long enough to scream. The woman's hand slipped from his. He spun wildly, searching, but she was gone, vanished beneath the pale swarm. His body was dragged down again, lungs burning, vision fracturing in the dark. He clawed desperately, breaking through one last time, only to find himself standing, shivering, ankle-deep in water. The farmhouse was gone. He stood in the parking lot of the motel. The neon sign buzzed faintly overhead, its tubes glowing whole again, as though it had never shattered. Highway Haven Motel, clean rooms, vacancy. The lot was full now. Cars of every kind sat crooked in the spaces, some rusted with age, others new and shining, all abandoned. Water streamed from their doors. The office light glowed warm and steady. The door stood open. The young man staggered forward, his body numb. Inside, the clerk waited behind the counter, pale and patient, glasses gleaming in the light. On the counter lay the ledger, flipped open to a fresh page. A pen rested neatly on top. The clerk's voice bubbled, low and wet. "Signed." The young man's lips trembled. He shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, I won't." The clerk's grin widened. Water dripped onto the page, blurring faint lines that had already begun to form. His name, written neatly, waiting to be finished. The clerk tapped the page. "You already did." The young man staggered back from the counter, shaking his head violently. "No, I didn't. I never signed anything." The clerk's grin split wider, pale lips cracking, water running down its chin. "All who enter sign. Some with ink. Some with blood. Some with breath. You signed when you stayed." The ledger glowed faintly, the letters of his name searing across the page as though burned into it. The pen rolled toward him, leaving a wet smear in its wake. He turned, desperate for escape. The office door slammed shut, the bell jingling once before going silent. The windows blackened, no storm beyond them now, only endless water pressing against the glass. The young man clawed at the walls, screaming until his throat tore raw. I won't stay." The clerk rose, impossibly tall, its head nearly scraping the ceiling. Its voice gurgled like a chorus of drowning throats. "You already belong to 6. The floor split beneath him. Black water surged upward, wrapping his legs, his chest, his throat. He fought, thrashed, but pale hands reached from the flood, pulling him down. His scream bubbled into silence as the ledger's page turned on its own. The pen scrawled neatly across the paper without a hand to guide it. Another name added to the list. By morning, the office was clean again. The ledger rested open, blank page waiting. The brass key to room 6 gleamed faintly on the counter, a bead of water dripping from its tag. Outside, the motel stood quiet. The curtains of room 6 were drawn, the bed inside neatly made, and the neon sign buzzed faintly through the mist. Vacancy. Always.